Today we are going to talk about channel model. Our contents can be divided into the following 4 parts. Firstly, we will introduce what is the channel model claimed by different authors. Then we will give what are the key elements of the channel model at the Chinese development pace. After that, there is a discussion on whether the channel model exists. Finally, we will talk about how different channel model from the East Asian model, from the perspectives of generalizability and replicability, and give our recommendations in the end. The channel model refers to a continuous learning and development model initially proposed by Deng Xiaoping and constructed by several generations of leaders. There are many different views among scholars at home and abroad on the definition of the channel model. For example, Professor Yu Keping, a well-known scholar, believes that the channel model is fundamentally a strategic choice for China as a developing country to modernize its society in the context of globalization, and that it is a set of development strategies and governance models that China has developed gradually in the process of reform and opening up to meet the challenges of globalization. Namel, a senior advisor at Goldman Sachs, was the first to introduce the notion of channel model, which is a mode of development that pursues justice and high-quality growth and is tailored to China's national conditions and social requirements. He defined the channel model as hard work, creativity, and experimentation and progressive development and energy accumulation. According to him, the essence of the channel model is invitation and experimentation, and the guiding principles are both pragmatic and idealistic, responsive to challenges, case-specific, and not pushed to be consistent. The channel model is a comprehensive overview and a conclusion of China's social growth route and experience since reform and opening up, covering political, economic, cultural, and other aspects. The channel model has 2 primary elements, namely the China political and economic models. In the past, scholars avoided the China political model in their research, but in fact, the 2 models complement each other, and it is difficult to understand the reasons for the success of the China economic model if one doesn't understand the China political model. The China political model is divided into 3 essential components, combining a unique culture, governmental system, and the market economy. The distinctive nature of the connection between the government party, the government, the people, and the society. A main vertical structure complemented with a horizontal structure for the institution's overall structure. And the China economic model is divided into 3 parts: mixed ownership structure, export-focused and domestic demand, government and market.
Next, I'd like to talk about the key elements of China model. For example, I think there are 2 important key elements of politics. First, the CCP is centralized and disciplined. That means power is always concentrated in the party headquarters. Next, the electoral system based on merit. That means the country's leaders were selected by examinations and advanced by performing at lower levels of government. And there are also 3 important key elements of economics. First is the dual track reform. That was first mentioned at the National Symposium of Young and Middle-Aged Economic Scientists in early September 1984, which is also called the Moganshan Conference. This reform enabled the coexistence of a planned and a market economy. with a gradual shift away from the planned component, growing out of the plan. The next key element I'd like to talk about is the go global and bring in strategy. Well, the idea of opening to the outside world was put forward by Deng Xiaoping and gradually deepened. In 1997, when Jiang Zemin met with representatives of the National Foreign Investment Work Conference, he clearly put forward the strategy of bring in and go global. The 17th National Congress of CCP formally proposed the strategy of go global and bring in. The go global strategy refers to exploring overseas markets and setting up factories, and the bring in strategy refers to the introduction of foreign advanced scientific, technological talents and leading management concepts. It's not simply to attract investment, but to selectively attract scientific talents and project funds without damaging the domestic economic environment. The third key element I want to mention is the Belt and Road Initiative. It was first mentioned by Xi Jinping during his visits to Kazakhstan and Indonesia in 2013. The initiative focuses South and West, seeking to build up infrastructure, trade, investment, and human linkages across Eurasia. I think the three key elements of economics are successive. The dual-track reform is a tentative exploration of country's economic structure. This means China moves towards a market economy. And the global and bring-in strategy symbolized China's first step to the world. Finally, the Belt and Road Initiative means China started to build the world with others.
After knowing about what is China model, there is a discussion on whether there is a China model existing. Some scholars claim that yes, there is a China model, while on the other side, there are people arguing no, the China model doesn't exist. For the side of yes, it can be seen from Beijing Consensus in 2004. In Beijing Consensus, China found a unique path of modernization through a willingness to innovate taking account of quality of life, as well as economic growth, providing enough equality to avoid unrest, valuing independence and self-determination, and refusing to let other Western powers impose their will. Moreover, the success of 2008 Beijing Olympic Games and China weathered the global financial crisis better than many Western countries in 2008 showed the China miracle and the rise of China owing to the China model. After President Xi Jinping came to office in 2012, the China model was not simply a product of the rapid economic growth during the reform years, but a result of the continued search for power and prosperity led by the CCP after the founding of the PRC. In 2016, President Xi proposed China's confidence in its path, theory, system, and culture, which proved China's model does exist. On the other hand, scholars argue about no, there is no China model. According to Scott Kennedy, Beijing Consensus is a myth because China did not follow any of its tenets. In addition, Zhang Weiying from Peking University claims that China model is a conceptual trap of China's reforms, by stating that China's economic success is not because it found a good model, but because it found its comparative advantage in the free market system. As a country of late development, China took full advantage of the managerial and technological products produced by the free market economies.
Zhang suspects the fundamental role of China model. Furthermore, scholars are pointing that China model is unsustainable, not only because of the rapid slowdown related to the rising labor costs, overbuilt manufacturing capacity, and increasingly competitive international market, but also because of the increasingly intense brick-leg growth engendered from rampant corruption, a growing wealth gap, and environmental destruction. Since there was an economic downturn in China of 2015, the discussion about whether there is a China model remained to continue. To know better about China's model, let's compare it from another well-known development model named East Asian model. The concept of East Asian model has been scrutinized since 1980s. According to Xu Pinghua and Ruihua Hu, East Asian model is the development models of East Asian region with impressive economic growth initially led by Japan in the post-World War II era. The key elements of East Asian model include the shared Confucian cultural heritage, strong government guidance, and export-led economies. Besides, the East Asian model and China model share the same characteristics of state control over finance, direct support for state-owned enterprises by the government, import substitution, industrialization in heavy industry, a high dependence on export markets, and high rate of domestic savings. This can be seen from representative countries of East Asian model, for instance, Japan, and for Asian tigers including South Korea, Singapore, China Hong Kong, and China Taiwan.
The generalizability of the East Asian model has three parts: government-led intervention in the economy, based on home resources and efficient foreign resource utilization, seize the moment and make the most of the chances presented by the global economy. And the generalizability of China model has four parts: handle the link between reform progress and stability correctly. In terms of reform strategy, a more reasonable sequence has been established to promote reform in a gradual manner, make eradicating poverty the primary priority of modernization, and concentrate on satisfying the people's most pressing needs. Demand market-oriented economic transformation complemented by robust government regulation and oversight.
After the discussion of the generalizability of the East Asian and China model, I'd like to talk about the replicability of them. First, when we discuss the East Asian model, we have to mention the Tiger Cub economies. They are Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines in Southeast Asia. After the great success of 4 Asian tigers in 1980s, the Tiger Cub economies copied their development model and grew rapidly in the 1980s and 1990s. Unfortunately, as the Asian financial crisis hit in 1997, these 4 Tiger Cub economies failed to lay a solid economic foundation like the 4 tigers. Their economic growth slowed down, and they fell into the middle income trap. The China model has attracted many third world countries such as Zambia, Rwanda, and other African countries to learn from it. Projects include the Tazara Railway, the African Union Conference Center, and so on. However, Wen Jiabao pointed out that the China model is not fully applicable to Africa, and Africa should develop its own African model. Finally, I'd like to talk about the threat to China model and the possible solutions. The China model was based on a false assumption that economic growth trumped everything else. These costs include widening wealth gap, environmental pollution, volatile stock market, and real estate bubble. This resulted in the economic downturn after 2015. The economy continued to slow down, and the costs of the China model became increasingly unbearable. To create a sustainable China model, CCP may need to transform China's growth model from export and investment-driven to qualitative internal development, and balance the state power by building democratic and legal institutions. And this is our conclusion. First, we introduced the concept, the content, and main characteristics of China model. Second, we talked about the political and economical key elements of China model. Next, we discussed about whether there is a China model. Then, we compared the differences between China model and East Asian model. Finally, we provided possible solutions to the threat to the China model. These are our references. Thanks for listening.